I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're taking a look at a compelling book. It is called Cement Dust, and it is written by a terrific author by the name of J Peter Bergman. This gripping tale of two creative cousins navigating the complexities of manic depression and caregiving won the 2022 IPPY Award. Today, we will discover how their intertwined lives reveal profound insights into mental health and artistic passion. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful and profound book. The links are below this interview. Peter, good to see you here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. Good to be here.
First question I got to ask you, because I know it's on the minds of our viewers, is why is it called Cement Dust?
One of the characters who is very, very challenged disappears at the beginning of the book. And the rest of the book is kind of a telling of her story. And what happens is, after she's been missing for quite a while, a package arrives that is supposedly her ashes,
Hmm.
but it's not. And what it turns out to be is cement dust.
Hmm.
So she becomes identified with that substance for the balance of the book. And she's a sculptor who works in concrete. So cement dust is very appropriate for her.
Yeah, it's part of the medium that she works with all the time. Is there a
Exactly.
metaphor there? Is there a reason why you chose that?
There is a metaphor there. We don't really know what happened with her, where she's gone, what's become of her. She's older. It's conceivable that she has died. She's with her grandson, who has basically kidnapped her. And the idea of a package of cement dust representing her became very appropriate to me early on in the writing. I wanted to get to that point in the book where we could pull that off and make that work.
Absolutely. What inspired you to write this book, and how much of it is drawn from real life experiences?
Well, I had a cousin, an older cousin, one of my mother's cousins actually, who was manic depressive, and I became her caregiver late in life.
Mm.
And so I experienced a lot of what this character Feyhe goes through in the book. A lot of it's fiction, but a lot of it's based on the realities that I witnessed and took part in. And I always wanted to tell her story. She wasn't a sculptor, by the way.
Mm.
That's fiction. But she was a woman with a great deal of insight and a great deal of experience in the publishing world. So part of that comes into the book as well.
Absolutely. Do you think mental health and artistic passion are sometimes intertwined?
Oh, very much so. So many of our very best poets, for example, have been manic depressive. And that element shows up in their work if you look for it. If you don't see it, that's fine. The poetry is what the poetry is. But if you understand where it's coming from, it's quite a wonder to discover the internal goings on of the mind of creative people.
Exactly, exactly. I think it's why a lot of writers drink. They actually like to be in that state of intoxication in order to be creative. They say you should also write early in the morning sometimes to get into that state of intoxication when you're still a little bit in dreamland. So it is very, very intriguing indeed. Let's give the folks at home an overview of what the book Cement Dust is about.
It's about these two cousins who meet late in her life, in the mid 20s in his life. He's heard about her, he's never met her. She had disappeared for a long period of time and suddenly is back in the family ambiance. And they meet, they have an immediate attraction, they become friends, and they aid one another, both personally and professionally, for a number of years. But ultimately, the manic depression takes over her life. And ultimately, because of their closeness, it takes over his life.
Tell us about the significance of the Korean immigrant family in the story and how they influence Faye's journey.
Well, when Faye has been commissioned to do a major sculpture for a park in Korea, and this man that she meets is her interpreter. He's been assigned to her, and she falls in love with him. He's young, he's attractive, he's dynamic, and he's about to get married. And she becomes friendly with both him and his wife and his future wife. And ultimately, when she is thrust out of Korea and loses her commission, loses her work, she adopts the Korean family and brings them to America, to New York, and becomes close to them again, but in a different way.
It's a very, very compelling aspect of the story, no doubt. Let me ask you this, as a longtime theater critic, how has your background influenced your approach to writing fiction?
A very good question. Writing theater criticism is anything but fiction. And yet there are ways of doing it that are not hypercritical,
Hmm.
but are instead more encouraging to both the creative artists and to the potential audience. And that's been my bent on writing theater criticism. I want people to go to the theater, see something, and make up their own minds, not just take me and my word for what is real. We all bring things to the theater with us that we don't discuss, but we have attitudes, we have opinions, we have feelings, and a play affects all of those. And in writing fiction, you're basically working with characters who are reacting in much the same way. They're experiencing something new, they're feeling it, they're getting used to it, they're working with it and turning out their own opinions. So I think they're very close in terms of style, writing theater criticism and writing fiction. The only difference really is that writing fiction doesn't have to be about anything really real.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shorter form, a longer form, of course, when you're writing
It
fiction,
is.
usually, particularly when it's a novel.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What message do you hope readers take away from Cement Dust, particularly regarding mental health and caregiving?
I think they should come away with two things. One is understanding that people with mental problems are not to be put aside and treated badly. They are human beings with feelings, opinions, and a great deal of value that they can bring to a relationship. And the other thing I want people to come away with is the fact that the two things, creativity in an artist of any type, of any style, in any form, is very much like experiencing your own mental significances. As
Mhm.
things change in your life, so things change in your art.
Mm.
And I don't know that many people realize that what they see, what they read, what they feel, if they touch a sculpture, has a lot to do with the way the artist felt and was coming from a place of confusion or difficulty or total reality.
Mm.
And I want them to understand that there's nothing wrong with mental illness. It can be the push, the thing that impels really creative work.
Absolutely. And I would say some could argue from one degree or another, all of us have some type of mental illness or difference.
I think
So,
we all have something. You're
yeah,
absolutely right.
yeah. Whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's a phobia, we all have
Sure.
something. Yeah, without a doubt. It makes the book interesting, for sure. You're a prolific writer. Tell us a little bit about your writing career and what you're working on right now.
Well, I've published two novels, Cement Dust, which you've talked about, and a
Mhm.
book called Small Ironies, which deals with something totally different. It deals with an American family, seemingly normal, but who are really all involved in prostitution.
Mm.
That book came out of a meeting I had with a woman in San Francisco years ago who was a prostitute who was studying law
Mm.
because she wanted to work on forming a prostitutes union to provide her sisters and brothers with health care, affordable health care. That was the whole drive. And that for me was so interesting that I decided it needed to be a novel. So that's where that book came from.
Well, it's
My book of
very timely because
Harry,
there's actually a push to relabel prostitutes as sex workers and
yes,
let them have the same rights as any other worker and health care and things like that. So it's a very timely
exactly.
book indeed.
And that's where this came from.
Yeah.
My other book, which was a prize winner, is a collection of very short stories called Counterpoints.
Mhm.
And Counterpoints is 15 short stories, nothing longer than 3 pages. And 14 of them counterpoint one another. They're arranged in pairs and pairs. And the 15th story is a standalone. And they came out of a compulsion I had years ago to write fiction using music titles as the inspiration. The first one was a story called What's Love Got to Do with It? Of course, you know the song, but it's about a woman who's a social worker interviewing a young girl who's been raped.
Mm.
And it turns out she was raped by her father.
Mm.
And therefore, the title, What's Love Got to Do with It?
To do
It's
it.
the first one I wrote. It's in the book, along with a lot of other really interesting little pieces. It got very good reviews and it won a Charles Dickens Award.
Wonderful. I love the
Yeah,
idea of using song titles. Myself as a writer, primarily as a news reporter, when I was a news reporter, I was often inspired by music. It would
for you.
often be, yeah, the lyrical flow of the words, as well as like taking different phrases like, what does love got to do with it, and so forth. I think it really connects with the reader or the listener because it's a phrase they're familiar with
I
and perhaps
agree.
have pondered. Yeah, yeah, you've blown it all sky high. We remember that song from the 70s. It has a lot of significance to us. So if we put that phrase within our writing, I think it really connects.
I think so too. And as I said, the book was very successful.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we wish you a lot of great luck on this book. It's already been recognized by folks as an award winner, as we mentioned earlier. It is called Cement Dust. It's written by J Peter Bergman. It is a gripping story of two creative cousins navigating the complexities of manic depression and caregiving. It's an amazing story. It's an original story. It's a well-told story. It's a well-written story. Peter, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much, Logan.
I appreciate your time as well, sir. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.